direction. Is there an area that could be enhanced?
Not at this point, no. Again, just the only thing I would say is, and we've talked about this before at EECC as well, when I meet with you there, that we want to keep the capital. So if you think of capital, a lot of that capital was purchased over the years, so is in historical dollars. And so the amortization is therefore based on historical dollars. So when we're just replacing the assets at basically the amortization amount, that's not keeping up with then the inflationary. So I would encourage you to continue to invest in capital, because we all know that what a water system cost 10, 20 years ago versus what it costs now, just the petroleum cost alone within those various assets has skyrocketed. So just keeping that investment in capital going, because it will pay you dividends in the year. Otherwise, you would end up having major expenditures in a year, or that you would end up having to have debt for.
Thank you.
All right. So these are the non-cash, or the changes in non-cash items on the balance sheet, and I won't spend a lot of time here. Most of these the larger numbers have to do with capital, and I think I've made that fairly clear. And as I mentioned, under financing activities, there's no new debt this year. This is repayment of the existing. Just two debts left. One will be repaid this current year, 2023. So you're down to just one debt going forward. Coming to cash balances at the end of the year, and again, about a $3 million, almost $4 million increase there. And then this is just a snapshot. This is a required statement under PSAB, and this is just it zones in on the capital asset piece of what has happened in the town this year. And you can see there that the amortization is that 1.7 that I keep mentioning. Then we get to the notes to the financial statements. I won't spend a lot of time. I do want to make a couple comments, though. This portion of the note right here, so just to remember that these financial statements are called consolidated, and that's because they include the BIA, the police services, and the EECC, but only 50% of EECC, because Malahide owns the other 50%, so they pick up 50% of that. We back out 50% of the EECC, sorry. And then Earth Corporation, as I mentioned, we are picking up our share of that, and I've talked about that. And then as well, Elmer area secondary water system. So that's a water system that's managed by Malahide, but we own, let me make sure I have my percentage, I think it's 97.48. Sorry, I had my numbers mixed up there. So almost all of it is, and so we accumulate, or we consolidate a portion of their, they have the financial statements done by their auditors, and then we pick up that percentage on our financial statements. The Elgin area primary water system, we do not consolidate. We just make mention in the notes to the financial statements, because we do not have a controlling interest of it. And so I will make just another couple comments here. So, whoops, I've gone too far. So in addition to the revenues that are shown on these financial statements, you'll see here that there's an addition, about $6 million of revenue that goes through these doors that your staff are responsible for managing, both for the county and school boards, and then we turn that money over to them, but we still have to collect it from all the different ratepayers, so that's still on us. This is the investment in Earth Corporation, which shows the increase. Pension agreements is just the amount paid by you for OMERS, which is the pension benefit for the employees. I would like to talk about this note a little bit. So this is your employee post-retirement benefit liability. This may be a term that's not familiar to you. So this is where we have agreements with mainly the police to pay for benefits until the age of 65. So they may retire at an earlier age. We continue to pay their benefits after that, and that's part of the contract. This report was done, sorry, I just want to go to my own copy here. This report was done 3 years ago, and as we all are aware, interest rates have gone up, as has inflation. And so when we get this report redone, I would anticipate to see this liability go up in value. So just keeping that in mind. This is based on the one that was done, it was actually done 3 years ago. And they are required to be done every 3 years. Deferred revenue are revenues that you have on behalf of specific spending formulas, so OCIF, building code, gas tax, and development charges. So these are all funds that have to be spent as specified either by your DC bylaw, OCIF requirements, or gas tax requirements. So that's why they're shown separately from other reserve funds, because we don't, as a council, have control over how they're spent, except within those parameters. Long-term liabilities, we've already talked about. I think the debt is in good shape. And then this is the breakdown of the accumulated surplus. So you see here the town doesn't have a surplus. That's because we moved it into the reserves, as was presented by your Director of Finance. And as per her report, I think it was in April, that was given. And so that was $365,000, just so you know. So the operating surplus for the year was $365,000. And then that is not an exorbitant amount given your level of revenues, for sure. And then this is the other good news story here, is this is your reserves at the end of the year. And you can see, even though we've been doing all of the reinvesting in capital, we have about a $2 million increase in the reserves at the end of the year. And then I don't have a whole lot to say on these. These are just your secondary and primary water boards. Public sector disclosure is just those on the sunshine list as required by these financial statements. And then the significant event is just the COVID note that has to stay this year, just because 2021 obviously was very affected by COVID. At the end of these financial statements are two schedules. This one is the schedule of tangible capital assets. So this breaks down each of your, or the total capital assets by components. And as you can see, linear assets, which would be your roads, water, and wastewater mainly, storm sewer. You can see that is the majority of your assets, which you would anticipate to be the case. And then this last schedule that's running off the page here a little bit, but sorry, I guess I can probably come back. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So at the end of this audit, we will, along with your staff, prepare the FIR. So that's a reporting that is required by the ministry to be done by each municipality in the province of Ontario. And it's all done by functions. And so this breaks down your revenues and the expenditures that you saw on the operations statement that we went through by each one of those functions. And these functions are defined within that FIR process. And so we just follow along with that. And this is the segue between these financial statements and then what is filed with the province. And that is my report. I know I did a whole lot of accounting jargon, so if I didn't explain something properly, please don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you, Christine. Any questions from council? Councillor Oslach.
Yes, Your Worship. I ask you this question every year.
And I'd be disappointed if you didn't.
You remember?
How are we doing? How are we doing with compared to other municipalities? Yes. I do remember, yes. And it's funny, I was at another one last night, another municipality, and I got the exact same question. So it's a pretty common question. I would say you're doing very well. The debt, obviously, right now, and I know there's some upcoming big projects that may change this, but as of this moment, the debt is very, very low for a municipality in Ontario, for sure. You've got a very healthy reserve balance, so that's nice. But again, as we know, any kind of water project, wastewater project are millions of dollars, and so that reserves don't last long when we're doing those kinds of projects. So keep up the good work, but keep moving in that direction.
I'll ask you the same question next year.
Will you? Okay, I will look forward to it. God willing, we will both be here.
Are there any other questions from council? Seeing none, we have a resolution.
Mover and seconder.
We didn't get a mover and second.
So that council receives the delegation from Christine Scrimger, auditor of Scrimger and Company, for information, and that council approves the 2022 draft audited financial statements as presented.
Mover and seconder, moved by Deputy Mayor Barber, seconded by Councillor Oslach. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is carried, thank you. And
Thank
thank you,
you.
Christine. Keep bringing the good news back every year.
Okay, well, keep doing your jobs too, and I will. Thank you.
Right.
Oh, sorry, I would be remiss. I just want to point out what a great hire you guys made a few years back and how well Heather and her staff do. We have very few journal entries in a year, so it's a compliment to her, and I should have said that at the front. But thank you. And I'm not just saying it because she's here.
Very good. And I will second that. Item 6, adoption of council and committee minutes. We have 6.1 first to read.
That council approves the following minutes. Regular meeting of council held on May the 17th, 2023.
Mover and seconder, Councillor Chapman and Councillor Rahi. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. 6.2.
That council receives the following minutes. Meeting of Elgin County Council held on May the 9th, 2023, and special meeting of Elgin County Council held on May the 4th, 2023.
Mover and seconder, Councillor Desrosiers and Councillor Chapman. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Is carried. Thank you. Consent agenda? Are we there? Yeah.
That items 7.1 to 7.5 of the June 7th, 2023 consent agenda be received for information.
Mover and seconder, Councillor Chapman and Councillor Rahi. Any discussion on any of those? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item 8.1, Manager of Planning and Development, resolution.
That the Council of the Town of Elmer receives report Plan 1623 regarding update on applications for official plan amendment OPA 0223 and zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 0223 respecting property known municipally as 34 Sydenham Street East. And that the Council of the Town of Elmer adopt the proposed official plan amendment application OPA 0223 in accordance with bylaw number 2523 and forward the necessary documentation and bylaw to the County of Elgin for their approval, and that the Council of the Town of Elmer approve the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 023 in accordance with bylaw number 2623, and provide 3 readings to bylaw number 2623. And finally, that Council hereby authorizes the mayor and clerk to enter into an alley use and maintenance agreement as attached to this report.
Okay, thank you. Mover and seconder, Councillor Chapman and Councillor Oslach. And we have a certain Heather James.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just here to provide council with an update since the April 19th, 2023 council meeting that an agreement has been prepared for the use and maintenance of the alleyway by the owners of 34 Sydenham Street East. The owners have reviewed the agreement and are in support of proceeding with the agreement as prepared by town staff and the town solicitor. As part of the agreement, the owners are required to provide the required insurance prior to entering into the agreement. I do want to note, however, that the owners of 34 Sydenham Street East have verbally indicated that they have visited all of the properties of all the affected owners and have unfortunately not been able to speak with the owners as they were not at the properties at the time of visit. So the agreement is attached to this report. The planning department's of the opinion it's the appropriate agreement that we need to protect the town in terms of liability, and as well, it's also appropriate in terms of the use of our municipal lands over a long-term basis. My recommendation is within my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Council? No questions? Seeing no questions, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. 8.2, Heather again. First is a motion.
That Council of the Town of Elmer receives report Plan 1723 regarding a request to amend a resolution for zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 0422 respecting property known municipally as 62 Pine Street West, and that Council of the Town of Elmer amends resolution number 2423 for zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 0422, 62 Pine Street East, apologies, Pine Street East, by removing the second paragraph in its entirety.
Well, mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor Barber. Councillor Ryan.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. This is just to provide council with a bit of an update. So, as I mentioned in the report, the zoning bylaw amendment is in fact in force and effect. No appeals were received. The issue that has come up for the owners at 62 Pine Street West is in terms of the building permit applications. In particular, and I hope I did a good enough job in my report explaining this, it gets kind of very technical in terms of the building code side, but what the owners have discovered that unfortunately that they cannot relocate the access door to open towards Wellington Street as there is not enough space internally for a landing for the internal staircase. That is how this unit would be accessed, because there is currently an internal staircase at the rear of this building with a door, and that's what the owners were intending to try to use. Prior to the public meeting, I had spoken with the property owner, and they had reached out to their designers, and their designers had did a review and felt confident that they could accommodate it. However, it's my understanding in working with the owners that, as I guess the designers have been kind of working closely with some of the details, they're just not able to meet the building code requirements for our chief building official to be able to issue a permit for that fourth unit. So what they're asking for, the owners are now proposing to remove the structure that there's kind of a little jut out at the back of this building, and what they're trying to do is, what they're proposing is to remove the structure, which is where this rear door is located. So they're going to remove the walls and the roof, enclosing the staircase that leads to the basement at the rear of the building. The existing concrete staircase will be left in place and will now be external to the building. So now, instead of having like a covered area for the tenant to kind of come into, there's going to be no covered area. They're basically going to walk across a walkway at the rear of the property, go down a flight of stairs, and there will be their door into their unit. They've added in here that a new entrance door will be added at the bottom of the staircase now, as opposed to the top. And that, and again, in accordance with building code requirements, new guard and handrails will be added to the staircase, as well as floor drains at the bottom to remove any rainwater and snow melt that may build up as a result of this change. I've attached to this report that Jill Van Kasteren has been notified of this. The property owners did meet with Jill. Jill has provided an email basically saying that she is in support of the plans. I have kind of followed up. This is the case. So the adjacent property owner has no concerns with this change. And actually, this building will now, because we're removing this enclosure, this building will now be encroaching even less into the rear yard. So it's actually going to be creating a little more privacy between the rear of this building and Ms. Van Kasteren's property line. I do want to note that the chief building official has reviewed the proposed change and has indicated that the building code concerns have now been addressed, and that should council agree to this revised change, the chief building official would be able to issue a permit for that additional dwelling unit, which will make a total of 4 units in this building. So what I'm requesting for council tonight is what we need is an amendment to that council resolution that council passed at the public meeting. And that requires just removing that second paragraph in its entirety in that amendment, or in that resolution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just to reiterate what Heather has said, this requires an amendment. The amendment is already part of the motion that we've moved and seconded. In order to pass the amendment, we need a 2/3 majority. So there's 6 people here tonight, 6 councillors. We need 4 votes, just so you know. Comments and questions from councillors? Seeing none, all those in favor? 1, 2, 3. The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 8.3, Manager of Planning and Development. We have a resolution.
That council receives report plan 1923 regarding proposed provincial policy statement 2023 and proposed Bill 97 summary for information.
All right, mover and seconder. Councillor Chapman. Deputy Mayor Barber. Heather.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. So before you tonight, there's a report to inform you of the policies of the proposed new provincial policy statement, also known as PPS 2023, and the proposed Bill 97. And I've kind of highlighted wherever I felt it was applicable, how the impact would be in land use planning for the town. Would council like me to go over the report in detail? Would you like me to answer questions? Do you want me to just provide a high-level summary? I'm open to whatever council would like. It's a lengthy report.
Deputy Mayor Barber?
My thought would be a Coles Notes version of the things that most likely will affect us.
I think the highlight is good, thank you.
Yeah, okay, absolutely. So what I see here is basically the sections that'll greatly impact us will be housing. And it's the, removes the mandatory intensification and density targets, which is a good thing. And it encourages more density and provides examples of that, which are already things that we are already doing in this town already. So we are already moving in the appropriate direction and trying to encourage and promote and increase the amount of housing supply that we have. In terms of settlement area expansions, my opinion is I think some of the changes that they have made to the settlement area expansion policies will actually be, could be quite beneficial to the town of Aylmer. The town of Aylmer is in fact, we're not split up like some municipalities where we have a rural area and an urban area, which is classified as a settlement area. Our entire municipality is a settlement area. So when we need to expand, we have to go under a different set of criteria with approvals with the county and with the province. However, what I can say is that these changes in the PPS, I believe, are really supportive when we, or if we need to expand our settlement area, in that the province is very supportive of expanding settlement areas where there is the appropriate infrastructure, where the appropriate land is available, and also to help increase housing. So I definitely see settlement area very important to us. What else is there that I think would be? Pretty much that's the areas that I see would be the most important to us, is the housing and the settlement areas. Of course, agriculture doesn't apply to us. We have very little natural heritage lands within our town, so that will not be of great concern. In the Bill 97 amendments, that's just kind of following through with what's being proposed with the PPS in terms of changing areas of employment, and some of the other factors that are proposed for Bill 97 are not a concern for us. We do not have an interim control bylaws here in this town. And in terms of the Bill 109 fee refund regime, I can say we have never been in a position where we have had to give back application fees because we have not either processed application or council hasn't made a decision within the statutory timelines. I'm open to any questions of council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heather. There was a very thorough written report and a very great synopsis. Council questions, comments? Deputy Mayor Barber.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Heather, has the province enacted the required regulations in order to enact these changes, or is it still in the loosey-goosey mode?
Well, the commenting period was supposed to end, I believe it was supposed to be Monday, but the province actually just announced last week that they are extending the commenting period for the PPS because they have now announced that they are placing the proposed lot severance policies in the agricultural areas on hold. And that is due to concerns from the agricultural community across Ontario regarding the number of lots that can be created on agricultural lands. And I've also been told there's been some other different agricultural groups that have expressed concerns. So as a result of that, the province has put that policy section on hold and actually has in fact extended the commenting period. So it's just in the commenting period right now.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Heather. Item 8.5. just a minor item. The Director of Operations and the Director of Financial Services, we have a, did I miss one? Did I miss 8.4? Sorry, I did. 8.4, Associate Director of Infrastructure and Operations, concerning Planning and Development Resolution.
That Council of the Town of Elmer receives a report Plan 1823 regarding Development Activity Biannual Update 2023 for information.
Mover and seconder, Councilor Oslash and Councilor Rosier. So who's doing the report? The Director of Infrastructure and Operations.
Thank you, Your
Heather.
Worship. Yes, and it was kind of a team effort from planning and development on this report. It basically went through our 3 separate departments on what we've been doing with the new development around town, and just to basically let council know, just point form about the different site plans and subdivisions that are taking place, some of the different building department things that have been happening. It's just basically to inform you of what's been going on, because we're sure you guys get a lot of questions from the public. So this just gives more information about what's been going on and what we've been doing. It's been very busy so far this year, and we expect it to continue. On that, we're happy to answer any questions if there are any, unless anyone else would have anything else to add.
That's a great report, Terry, and I see a question from Councilor Rosier.
Thank you, Your Worship. Do we have any updates on 249 John Street South, the old pantry mart? I didn't see it included in your report.
Yeah, I can speak to that. The reason why it's not been included in the report is because the application has not been deemed complete yet. We've had applications submitted, but they have not been deemed complete. Once they've been
Councillor-
deemed complete,
Councillor Oslash?
they'll be processing and council will see it at a public meeting.
Perfect.
Oslash.
Your Worship, to Terry, what about Cottonwood?
Through your worship, that's a good point. We didn't include an update on Cottonwood at this time. It probably should have been, to be honest. But it's progressing. Lots are being developed as we speak. And Phase 2 has been completed and building permits are being issued.
So what about Phase 3?
I can speak to Phase 3. The town has not received any applications for Phase 3.
Very good report, Terry.
Any other questions? Councillor Chapman.
Just to the condos that are going in on John Street South, is there any word from them? It seems to be at a standstill, so I just wondered if you've heard anything from them.
Which,
The condos at John Street South,
okay.
near the fire hall?
Oh, are you referring to then to 335 John Street South?
I think that's what it
Okay.
is, yeah.
Yep, so the owner's currently completing their draft plan of condominium conditions, and they're working towards receiving final approval from the County of Elgin.
Deputy Mayor Barber.
Thank you, Worship. I like the format of the summary. Good information for council and the people of Elmer to have. It'll be nice to see that twice a year, which I believe is the intent. Residential construction, to Terry, seems to be on the upswing. Any ratio from the last couple of years as compared to history? How we're doing?
Through your worship, I believe it's about on par with last year, but we're expecting it to pick up here, just from what we've heard. It did experience a slowdown there for a while, but we've heard that it should be picking back up with the development that's been in the area, with the development that's in the area.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Yeah. I just wanted to repeat that that's a tremendous report, and I hope we do see something twice a year, because it's nice to be able to look at this and answer questions about what's going on where, and there's a lot going on everywhere here in town. So, no other question from council? All those in favor? Carried, thank you. And now 8.5. A short resolution.
That report operations 1923, entitled Tender Award and Debt Issuance Estimate 2023, be received for information, and that council accept the design build proposal from Landmark Structures Company in the amount of $10,239,000 for the design build of the Elmer Water Tower, and that the council accept changes to the scope of work as outlined in the report to take advantage of design cost savings, and that council authorize the Director of Financial Services, Director of Operations, and Chief Administrative Officer to negotiate payment schedules and other contractual related matters with Landmark Structures prior to entering an award, and that the following endorsement of the Director of Financial Services, Director of Operations, and Chief Administrative Officer, and the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to enter into agreement with Landmark Structures Company for the purpose of completing the work, and that notwithstanding subsections D and E, in the event that negotiations are unsuccessful, a further report will be provided to council for consideration. And further, that council approve the budget amendment from $7 million plus $3.6 million grant funding to $8 million plus $3.6 million grant funding to allow the water tower construction to move forward for an overall budget cost of approximately $11.7 million. And that council directs staff to prepare the documents for loan application and for bylaw and a bylaw for debt issuance to allow the water tower construction to move forward for up to $8 million. And further, that council be provided with a additional report outlining the final details of debt financing when the required bylaw is presented for consideration.
Thank you. Mover and seconder. Councillor Chapman, move. Deputy Mayor Barber, second. Who's going to speak first on it?
Thank you, Your Worship. I can start. This is a fairly comprehensive report and a lot to unpack, so I'll go through it quickly. As the council will recall, we've been working for this replacement of the standpipe with an elevated water storage facility for some time now. This allows us to better serve the community, provide better emergency services support, as well as maintain our sort of historical competitive advantage with our water and sewer. On May, sorry, I lost my spot here. So the town issued a tender. We closed it on March 31st. One tender was received from Landmark Structures. It is not unusual in Ontario for Landmark to be the sole bidder, the only bidder on these projects. If you're into the States, they have some more competition, but in Ontario, it seems like for a tower of our size, they are sort of the service provider of record. They have a really good reputation in the industry. They want to maintain that, so they don't use that the sort of the sole bidder to their advantage, it would seem. Very many places out there that have only received the one bid and are still happy with the services and everything. So it came in at $10.239 million was the tender price. The staff then met with Landmark to find out if there was any improvements on our design or any value-added engineering that they would recommend to see if we could save some money and maybe not have to go through constructing or designing or building. So from that proposal, we met with Landmark, and we were able to reduce the cost of the tower by $137,000 without compromising any of the things that were important to the town, save and except for a few items. that was important to the design that we did not take advantage of. And I'd also like to say that there's a couple of items that are still outstanding that we have to continue to look at. That's why the resolutions were kind of long. They're not items that would typically be purview to the council's review. It would be more like a change order. So if through the review of the, I think I used the generator as an example, if we can spec a lower standard of standby generation, which would result in a cost savings, we could work through that with the change order process that's typically in a contract of this nature. So there's a few outstanding items, but they're more of an improved equivalency back and forth. Peter Penner, our town's consultant, you'll see, has recommended award of the tower after confirming for himself that the tower does represent good value in relation to what he's seeing out on the market. Before I hand this over to Heather to sort of do the financial, if I could draw your attention to like page 4, you'll see there's a highlighted section, the contingency amount for the water tower. It's listed as 7%. I don't know if everybody's gotten there yet. So just to kind of give you an idea of some of the challenges of this project, it's not unusual for a construction project to have a contingency amount. The contingency amount varies typically on the construction project. Anybody that's ever renovated a bathroom or a kitchen knows that, you know, sometimes you could be 30% because you're not sure of what's there. On a road project, depending on the nature of the water and the sewer and all that, it could range anywhere from 15 down to 5%. And normally, on a contingency, it's if we don't spend it or if we don't, project doesn't use it, it's not a problem. It would just simply remain in the reserves. So Heather will go through why that's not the case with this project. It's unique. I have called around to all the recent builds that Landmark has done to talk with their staff, to talk with them specifically about the contingency. Did they maintain a contingency? If so, how much did they have and did they use it? So it would seem like Landmark, the contingencies weren't used for the extras and all those typical things that a contractor would sort of look to gain. The soil conditions were worse, or they moved, there's something in there that they would come after the town for more money. This is a design build. Here's what we want. You know, give us a price to build it. So what we're hearing is that the contingencies aren't there to address those requests by the contractors, that most of the areas that built a tower, their contingencies were spent on improvements to their design. So they would include, they you know, may have not originally included the backup power generation or the SCADA or the bulk water. All of those things we've included in our design. We've consulted with our SCADA people, we've consulted with the operations people, and we've sort of consulted with everybody. So we're pretty confident that the 7% is probably high, and you can see it's $700,000. So I just wanted to go through some of the background of where we're trying to determine the best number for contingency. And I don't want to move into the finance because I'll mess it up. So maybe I'll throw that over to Heather.
So at the time of writing this staff report, you know, we had thrown in the $8 million number purely because I wanted to be able to do the application up to $8 million with that contingency. We basically got the quote, you know, sat together and said what would be a good number, because we have to go to council and we have to meet all these timelines to get the loan application in, get the underwriting done by Ministry of Ontario through the infrastructure loan agreement, have it come back to us, get a bylaw. So the timelines are really tight. So Rob and I and Andy just met with Landmark today. I'm feeling more comfortable with dropping that contingency down by, you know, $200,000 to $300,000. So that would change the debenture amount down to between 7.6 and 7.8, and then maybe we can use some of that contingency money out of our reserves. So the reason why we had that in there was purely for the analysis and the discussion points with council. So what I would like to do if, with council's blessing, is to go in for the loan application, say, $7.8 million at this point, get it through, come back on the 21st, have the bylaw approved with the proper number. The contingency number will still be there, but I'm thinking it'll be around 400,000. And if we don't use that contingency, the entire amount, we will have debentured maybe only $200,000 of it, because I'm going to suggest that we actually take $130,000 out of the reserves from the contingency. So the contingency is based on, the latest recommendation would be 4% of all of those numbers and the unrecoverable HST. And I don't think that, we should remove that entire contingency, because with the SCADA projects coming up, Rob's doing the design on the SCADA. If there's an opportunity for some of those SCADA components to be pulled ahead while we're doing the water tower, because it makes financial sense, I'd like to leave that there for those reasons, with council's blessing. So I've had a lot of questions also, and I'm going to address them here about the water reserves. So I've had several people say, why aren't we using the water reserves? So firstly, the business model that we did with the water rate study with Watson has these debt amounts in it. We had it $5 million as a water tower in the water rate study. We had an additional $3.5 million in underground water infrastructure, because at the time we had no idea how much a water tower would cost, but we weren't sure if it was going to be 11 million or 5 million or 8.5. So we did put 8.5 in there. I met with Watson last week to run these new numbers with these new interest rates. The only change at the end of the day will be in 10 years less 300,000 in the reserve. So if everything stays the same, the water cycles stay relatively the same, and we don't have a bunch of really wet years where nobody's using water, we shouldn't have an issue paying these debts down. This water rates are also scheduled to be redone in 2026. All this new information will be republished into the water rate study. So I have no concerns at this point with issuing this debt. It was planned for, it was in the approved council recommendation for the water rates in 2021, which we instated in 2022. And every year, those water rates we've increased per the water rate study. So this council has approved those water rates. I don't know if anybody has any more questions on the debt side or on the design side, but we'll hopefully be able to answer as many questions as you have.
Questions? Deputy Mayor Barber.
Thank you. To Heather, just a confirmation then that the revenue from the water resources will be enough to cover the debt?
Correct. The water is self-funding, and that debt is in the water rates. So as Watson's recommendations, if we're following Watson's recommendations, we will be fine.
A sidebar to that, we have communication equipment that's on the top of the existing tower. Is there any potential to expand that because the new tower will be taller and probably with a wider range?
Through your worship to Deputy Mayor Barber, the existing water tower will remain there for a little while, so we'll probably leave that infrastructure there. Those are self-funded by the utility. The Elmer Area Secondary Water Board has the one up there. Those are self-funded by those. Certainly, if a service provider came forward and said, I'd like some space on the new tower, we would definitely be looking at it and looking for an agreement that we could bring forth to council on a recommendation to do something like that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Councillor Chapman.
It's not a question, it's
Oh,
through
that's fine.
you. It's more of a comment. This is so exciting. This has been a long time coming, and to see it being in these stages is just spectacular. Great job. Thank you, guys. It's amazing.
Good, and it is amazing. I don't recall the town of Elmer ever spending this much money at one time. For a good cause, because it's putting us into the future. So that's great to see something come to fruition. Councillor Rahi.
Mr. Mayor, do we have a backup generator for the standpipe now, or do you not need one for it? What's the difference between a water tower and the standpipe? Why does it need like, and that one doesn't, and that one, the new one does?
we've sized, the size of the new generator will accommodate, probably you're gonna see that, right now we have like a standby, small standby power, communication, lights, heater, that's about it. It's likely, once the new tower comes in, that we'll see down the road the need for the town to have their own rechlorination system in the tower. So we've pre-planned what the energy uses, what the generator will have to size for that new system now, not then. Yeah.
Something else to add, I really like the bulk water filling station too, because there really isn't anything around here, so I think that's a nice little touch too, so, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Oslach.
Yes, Your Worship. Forgot what I was going to say. So, about the new water tower, it will come in handy with boundary readjustment. Readjustments.
I think Andy has some comments dealing with this.
Just for the members of the public that are watching or tuning in too, I just wanted to highlight kind of some of the comments of staff and council that, you know, this is probably the biggest capital undertaking in the town's history, if not in recent memory. And we're being very aggressive here we are taking on debt, but it's a 15-year repayment. And in normal times, you'd see municipalities take on 20 years. So this is an aggressive debt repayment schedule here that means that we're spending less on interest. We're spending more on the actual capital project. And, you know, for 15-year debt for an asset that is expected to last us for 80 to 100 years, that's a very good investment, and it's really going to position the town well for future growth and all our industries and residential needs in the future are going to be serviced. And this water tower will also benefit our neighboring communities and people on the secondary line. Elmer having increased watering capacity only helps our neighbors if they decide in the future to expand themselves. So it's good overall news story, and I think hopefully I can't wait to see this constructed. And we're already planning a plaque for Rob on the side of it there.
I can recall on the old
quick question,
stand-up, we
Your
had a painting on the side of it for somebody you remember in the past. Actually painted, I've forgotten who it was. I think it was Steen. I think it was Steen's name that appeared on the top of the standpipe, but we don't want Rob's name on there. Deputy Mayor Barber.
Quick question, if I may. The loan, is it open or is it closed?
Through you, Your Worship, with Infrastructure Ontario, it is, they're very specific debenture agreements, so it is a closed loan. It will be amortized over 15 years with council approval, interest paid semi-annually, so that we're not outlaying cash before the water revenues come in. It's probably the most competitive option out there right now. I don't know if.
Okay.
Serial debenture, so basically you're going to be paying more down at the front, less on the tail end.
Thank you.
A question about the loan as well. I noticed today the Bank of Canada raised the rate by 1/4%. Is that going to affect Infrastructure Ontario?
Possibly. Their spot rates change every day. So I don't know if I say the sooner we get this bylaw approved, the better before. But they have direct access to capital markets that a lot of banks don't. So sometimes the banks will take a couple months to decide or a couple weeks to decide where Infrastructure Ontario, may or may not be before or after the banks. I'm not really sure how that's going to roll out. But
We hope they don't change. Anyway, any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And I'm just going to note it is unanimous. Point 6, right, John? All right. 8.6, the Associate Director of Infrastructure and Operations. We have a recommendation, motion.
That report operations 1823 entitled Tender Award 2023 Sidewalk Program be received for information, and that the tender submitted by Chad Hartman Construction in the amount of $79,900 excluding HST be accepted. And further, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the agreement with Chad Hartman Construction following the terms and conditions within the tender documents.
Mover and seconder. Moved by Councilor Lozaj, seconded by Councilor Rahi. Who's speaking? Oh, Terry's speaking of this, I think.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll try to keep it brief. This report relates to the sidewalk program that's been established for the town. The goal for the sidewalk program is to complete missing links throughout the town's sidewalk system and maintain the sidewalks to a minimum maintenance standard. A sidewalk program map has been developed to illustrate the existing sidewalk system. If I could just highlight that on the screen is on page 3, I believe. You can see the existing sidewalk system is denoted in blue, and all of the missing links are denoted in red. So this was utilized to also create a sidewalk warrant rating system to consistently rank the missing sidewalk links. The rating summary and warrant system is provided in the report as well for reference. This map and warrant system have both been utilized to create a capital plan for the sidewalk program. The 2023 sidewalk program has been tendered early to obtain the best possible pricing. The goal for this year was to complete 3 missing links within the available budget. The 3 sections are located on Ann Street, Progress Drive, and Farmington Ave. There's also a section in the contract to complete various sidewalk repairs on several local roads. Chad Hartman Construction was a low bidder on the project. The tender received competitive prices, and staff would recommend to proceed with the contract. On that, I'd take any questions if there are any.
Questions, comments from council? Councilor Rahi.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. As I live on a street that doesn't have a sidewalk, I'm happy to see this, and it's about time.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried, thank you. 8.7, Director of Operations, request concerning the request from EDHS. Motion.
That report operations 1723 entitled Request to Occupy Park Space, Horticultural Society Pollinator Garden be received for information, and that council permits the Horticultural Society to occupy park space for a pollinator garden as per the conditions outlined within that report operations.
Mover and seconder, Councilor Lozaj and Councilor Chapman. Who's doing the report on this? Rob?
Thank you, Your Worship and Council, for accommodating this report on tonight's agenda. The Parks and Beautification Advisory Committee met on Thursday, May 25th. One of the items on the agenda was the Horticultural Society request to install a pollinator garden in the Town of Aylmer park system. The committee reviewed the request and feel that it's a warranted and a good project in our parks system. The committee also felt that a better location might be served in Steen South. We relayed that to the Horticultural Society, and they were in agreement with the change of location on their project. So the Parks and Beautification Committee would recommend council consider granting space for the project using those conditions that are outlined in the report. With one other item I'd like to bring to the council's attention that the committee feels is a worthwhile undertaking. As the council is aware, we're starting to see more and more requests for people to occupy or do something in our park system. And we think that there's probably a program out there similar to the Adopt a Park program that may help to streamline these requests and allow us to take advantage on some of those initiatives and put some ground rules in place to better serve the community. So that's something the committee is looking at, maybe a program to bring forward to the council for the council's consideration and help to maybe streamline the stuff that's coming to council and help our community and the town as well.
Rob, I think that's a great idea. Questions? Councillor Oslett?
Yes, Your Worship. To Rob, I think the butterfly garden and a pollinator garden is a good idea. I created one at Catfish Creek. I know I am a member of the Elmer Horticulture Society, and I'll talk to them about adopt a park.
Deputy Mayor Barber?
The Horticultural Society looks after a couple of other projects around town. Will they be stretched to take on another project? Are they comfortable that they can handle it?
I'm not sure I'm the best suited to answer that, Deputy Mayor Barber.
And Councillor Oslett, you're a member. Can you?
The pool house, the garden at the pool house, the north end rock at the entrance to the town, they look after that. They look after the fairgrounds, and they look after the old town hall.
Do they do the complex of the
No,
island?
no.
Okay.
I guess the question was, can you handle them all?
Yes, we can handle them all.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried, thank you. Item 8.8, Director of Corporate Services. Motion, Judge.
That report, Clerk 3323, entitled Proposed Amendments to Town Procedural Bylaw, be received for information, and that council endorses the proposed amendments to the procedural bylaw, and further that council directs staff to take the necessary actions in accordance with the notice policy and applicable legislation to implement the endorsed amendments to the procedural bylaw.
Mover and the seconder. Councillor Chapman, Councillor Rye. Judge.
Through you, Your Worship, and two members of council, this was a report that Owen and I prepared really as a matter of routine policy review. From time to time on some of our more common bylaws that council and the community engage with on a regular basis, we'll review them just to make sure that we're fully up to date with best practices and staying on top of the needs of our community. So for this report, staff solicited feedback from council and earlier this year to guide the proposed changes that are included within this staff report. I've grouped the changes into 5 different items, so they have to do with electronic participation and in quorum for electronic meetings outside of an emergency, provisions for reconsideration, provisions respecting the declaration of pecuniary interest within a meeting, and specifically requiring that members vacate the council chambers, provisions for suspending the rules of order, and finally, an expansion of the scope of the consent agenda. Within the report here, just to keep it brief, I'm going to focus on electronic participation during council meetings and expansion of the scope of the consent agenda. So for the first item, legislative services staff are recommending that council consider amending the procedural bylaw to enable electronic participation in council meetings outside of a declared emergency. So our rationale for wanting to extend this has to do with the town's successful experience with electronic meetings since 2020. We were obligated to do it. We had no choice. The authority that we had those meetings under was different than legislation that permits us to have them in perpetuity now. But overall, we generally had a good experience, and Elmer was a leader among similar municipalities in the area in successfully delivering those meetings. We also were able to undertake a major renovation in the council chambers, and as a part of that renovation, we saw IT improvements that also better accommodated this option. Electronic participation makes meetings more accessible and efficient for public participation. And, as well, given that the policy option's been available to every municipality in Ontario now for several years, in crafting this bylaw amendment or proposed bylaw amendment, we were able to observe a lot of the best practices that, similar sized and larger municipalities have, tried and tested. And one final item I just want to mention was, it's a supportable recommendation in terms of enabling electronic participation in meetings moving forward outside of an emergency. We really don't want to overshadow any of the approved corporate policies respecting the right to disconnect or take away from, I think what our observation is that in-person meetings lead to, higher quality discussion. So I think, while the policy is somewhat open-ended in terms of circumstances where somebody can join a meeting electronically and participate and add quorum that way, we certainly don't want that to be the norm. I mean, I think everyone returning after the COVID-19 restrictions were lifted agreed that being in person was nice, and we've had good success with that. But this is just another option to have in the toolbox to improve our accessibility and really to get with a policy direction that many municipalities have taken. And then finally, I'm just going to add on to expanding the scope of the consent agenda. So currently, the consent agenda serves council by expediting routine matters of business into a single motion. So these are, resolutions from other municipalities, correspondence that's, again, receiving for information. And with this proposed change, we're recommending that the consent agenda be expanded to include approval of previous meeting minutes and receipt of advisory committee and external meeting minutes. And the rationale is that, these items are suitable for the consent agenda because they're highly routine, and typically we're noting that there isn't significant discussion when they're listed as individual items on the agenda. And we've noticed that it's consistent with best practices observed in other municipalities. So no different than any other item on the consent agenda. If somebody wishes to speak to minutes that are received or minutes that we're approving, it'll be no different than when they're a single item. We'll just treat them as a group of items under a single resolution. And finally, I'll just note that pending endorsement of the proposed amendments to the procedural bylaw, we'll take the necessary steps to provide notice to the community. Ultimately, what we're looking for tonight is just council's confirmation that we're headed in the right direction with this proposed bylaw amendment. And we'll give notice in the newspaper, it'll be posted on the website, et cetera. So everyone will have a chance to review the final bylaw. As I said, we're just making sure that we're headed in the right direction and suiting the request of council on that.
Very good. Questions or comments? Councillor Roselach.
Yes, Your Worship. To Josh, I notice you have a motion to reconsider added to the procedure bylaw.
Yes. Happy to elaborate on that, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Oslich. So, yeah, we've got the motion to reconsider within our current procedural bylaw. Really, the recommendation for this change comes from us doing an environmental scan of other municipal procedural bylaws, and this was one that was staff initiated, and we noted that as a general rule, their municipalities are requiring 2/3 as opposed to a majority. And we noticed that the town was majority vote, so we decided to, again, follow up on that practice that we're noting in other municipalities, and we also added some procedural clarity regarding reconsiderations, and I should mention that most of that is clarifying Robert's Rules of Order, and by including that in our procedural bylaw, it just saves us from having to reference a separate document.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor? Yes, carried. Thank you. Item 8.9, corporate services. Josh.
That report, Clerk 3423, entitled Land Sale Update, 105 White Street, be received for information.
Mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Barber, Councilor Ross.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, and two members of council, the purpose of this report is to provide public disclosure of the successful sale of 105 White Street. This sale closed on May 26, 2023 for a final purchase price of $1.2 million to Remtech Industries. As council is well aware, this is a locally well-established business in the community, and we're really pleased to have been able to work with them through a lease agreement as we satisfied the conditions of the purchase and sale agreement. So Remtech is already set up. They're operating in that facility. We really never skipped a beat, even throughout the process of selling the property. And I also should mention that, the reason for that prolonged period to satisfy those conditions really had to do with a delay in accessing records that were in the care and control of other government agencies. And during that period, as said, council authorized a lease agreement which facilitated the expansion of the business and generated revenue for the municipality throughout the entire period. So with that said, happy to answer any questions, but this is our public reporting out. And we did have this item listed as one of the items for closed session this evening, but being that we added a public report, we won't need to discuss it in closed session. This is the report out.
Mover and seconder. Almost forgot that. Councillor Oslach and Councillor Robb. Did that, no. Questions, comments? Councillor Oslach.
Yes, Your Worship. Can we use a 1.2 million to pay for the water tower?
Through your worship, and to Councillor Oslach, so we've added the proceeds from that sale have gone into the general land reserve. So while they won't fund the water tower, there's a good chance that they could be used to pay for future development works that are going on, say in the industrial park, et cetera.
Any other questions? Just a comment, we've come a long way from worrying about the bypass. All right. Some of you who have been around for a while will know what I'm talking about. Anyway, no other questions? All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Eight point 10, Chief Administrative Officer on the EMO delegation request motion.
That report, CAO 3423, respecting AMO delegation request to be received for information, and that council directs staff to submit delegation requests with ministries upon the following issues: A, physician recruitment; B, increased childcare opportunities; and C, Elmer boundary adjustments.
Mover and seconder, Councilor Desrosiers, Councilor Rahi. Andy. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the intention of this is to try to do some delegations. You'll see the physician recruitment and childcare opportunities kind of fall outside of our scope, but I think it's important to raise to ministries in light of the Volkswagen plant coming nearby. Certainly, increased physicians and childcare is going to be essential for our community for attracting the skilled workforce for that factory. And I think that we really want to make a strong case that if they are going to do any special initiatives, that they consider Elmer as part of them. And of course, the Elmer boundary adjustment is another component that we continue to work on and talk with ministry, and we're also going to be soon talking with the Township of Malahide after we get our population growth projections. I believe in August, we anticipate to have those before council. So these are all ongoing matters, but they're all kind of becoming critical for us to address because of our close proximity to what will be the largest factory in the country.
Okay. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's carried, thank you. New business and matters of urgency, I don't think we have any. Readings, bylaws, and proceedings, I think 10.3.1 is the only one we have, right? No, we have a bunch.
That council gives 3 readings to and approves. Bylaw 2523, being a bylaw to adopt the official plan amendment number 22, and that's respecting property known municipally as 34 Sydenham Street East. Bylaw 2623, being a bylaw to amend the bylaw 5799, being the zoning bylaw of the town of Elmer, and again, that's respecting property known municipally as 34 Sydenham Street East. Bylaw 2823, being a bylaw to authorize the signing of an agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Elmer and Chad Hartman Construction for the 2023 sidewalk program. Bylaw 3923, being a bylaw to authorize the signing of an agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Elmer and Actremium Summa Engineering for SCADA strategy and framework review. Bylaw 4023, being a bylaw to authorize the signing of an agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Elmer and 10000049344 Ontario Inc. known as Michael McPhee for alley use and maintenance agreement. And finally, bylaw 4123 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at the regular council meeting held on June 7th, 2023.
Mover and a seconder. Counselor Chapman, Counselor Bride. Any discussion on this? We've all seen these items before, so. Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried, thank you. So item 11, correct? Yep. Inquiries by members. Deputy Mayor Barber.
Thank you, Your Worship. Two items. Could we have an update on the fire properties reconstruction for the benefit of the people?
Certainly, through you, Your Worship, and to Deputy Mayor Barber, this is an item that myself, the chief building official, and the CAO have stayed in close contact with the affected property owners, their insurance companies, et cetera. I can confirm that as of today, shoring work is underway at the Mr. Natural building on the east side of where the fire took place. And so Tyler, the CBO, also confirmed with me at the end of the day today that we have issued a shoring permit for work to take place at the Scotiabank as well on the west side of where the fire took place. And finally, once all that shoring work is complete on either side of the site of the fire incident, a demolition permit will be able to be issued to the property owner of the affected property. And I can confirm that we've already received that application for the demolition permit. We're just awaiting, again, issuance of that shoring permit at the Scotiabank site, and for that work to take place in order for the CBO to issue the demolition permit. So we're very hopeful that we'll see action in the coming months, but ultimately this is something that really is up to the private landowners, and we're happy to see them working together well and swiftly so far.
Okay, thank you. Second question to Rob. Update on the stoplight project, Talbot and John.
I will defer to Terry on that one.
Yes, through your worship, there will be a further report coming on that project. I've been working through some of the contacting the county and trying to get on board with some of the traffic signal optimization projects that they have going on, and there will be a further report on that coming.
In a timely manner?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Statements and committee reports, anyone? Councilor Chapman?
I just have a statement. So our Gear Up for Safety is on Saturday. We have 50 youth already registered for this event. And the MTO is even on board. So we're quite excited and hope that it's a great event. So in case you're not aware, it's a bicycle rodeo and touch a truck, and it's between Elmer and Malahide and the MTO and the OPP. So this is just a nice example of the communities working together.
Always a great event.
10 till 1.
Anyone else? Deputy Mayor Barber.
Thank you, Worship. Both the primary and the secondary water boards completed clean audits. The primary board has a compliance rating of 97 point something %. It just goes to show that dotting of the I's and crossing of the T's is so critical. There was some documentation that the process had changed and knocked it down 3%. Everything, it's not a water quality issue. It was the documentation, and that's since been corrected. The tours, which some of the members of council took advantage of a couple of weeks ago, are going to be opened to the public in the near future. with the restriction from a couple of rooms where high energy is, the electrical room will be off limits and chemical storage will be off limits. But for those less than grade 9, there's the intent to create more water quality awareness at the schools in a traveling program geared to the ages of the children, which is good to see. And finally, speaking of the largest plant in Ontario, we're in discussions at the primary board for the supply of water to Volkswagen. And there are some matters that are being worked through, but moving in a positive manner at this time.
Anyone else? Next item is a report of the mayor. I will try to, I have a number of items, but I'll try to keep. Well, recall that we have created a finance committee on which every councillor was sit. We'll have the first meeting on June 21st, and we're looking at making it at 6 o'clock before the regular council meeting. So just so you know, one of the things that we will do at that meeting is elect a chair. And I just wanted to say ahead of time, I will not be running for chair of the finance committee, so somebody else will take on that duty, hopefully. The situation will be kind of a round table, rather than I won't be sitting here. We hope that we make it a lot less formal and more engaging in the sense of dealing with financial matters. So we'll be sitting around the councilor's table rather than this particular format. Secondly, you've probably seen when you're coming in the incredible pictures of past Elmer that are hanging on the walls. I'd like to thank Chelsea Jibb for doing that. She took a long time to put those together and did a tremendous job. She also has taken on the task of refurbishing, I guess, or actually recollecting the photos of past council. They'll be in my office, and for those of you that walk through my office, you can kind of see them on the floor there now. But at one point, you were in the hallway when you came into town, and they disappeared. And Josh tracked them down. I mean, they didn't come to any harm. They were at the Elgin County Archives, but we managed to get copies of them so that at least we can have them hanging in the town of Elmer rather than the archives of Elgin County only. Mentioning doctor shortage, I just briefly want to mention that, again, the Health Recruitment Partnership is doing everything it can, and this is talking to the people out there in Elmer, that doing everything it can to get doctors to come to this area. There are 12 doctors short in St. Thomas and Elgin County from what there were 3 years ago. Not all of that is because we've lost 12 doctors. Some of that is because the roster requirements of the province in terms of paying for doctors is a lot smaller than it used to be. It used to be doctors could handle 2,500 or 3,000 people, but now it's only about 1,600 patients that each doctor kind of handles. So that's part of the problem why we have fewer. So we are working on that quite a bit. The East Elgin Secondary School boundaries you read in the paper is successful, and I just wanted to point out that there was a lot of people from the town who came together, including this council, to make a difference, I think, in terms of what the decision was at the board office, because senior staff changed their mind in terms of recommendation, and that's where the important part comes, is they did change their mind and make a recommendation that the school boundaries stay the same as they were before. So that's a very successful item. I attended a meeting today of what's called the Elgin County Drowning Prevention Coalition, which is a new organization which is trying to get awareness out to the public about training lifeguards and about the dangers of drowning, period, especially amongst children. And I'd like to be part of that organization because it does provide some support for access for training lifeguards and access for swimming and swimming teams and all that kind of situation, because we all know that the access to the police college is not going to last forever. So we're going to cross this problem in a few years again in terms of the access to swimming pool in Elmer. Two little items. I'd like to start something called Mayor Thank Yous, in which I will personally select a citizen from the town of Elmer and provide them with a certificate that says thank you or in appreciation of or something like that. It'll be an in-house document and just something to give to people who have made a difference in the town of Elmer over the years. So I'd like to start that at the next council meeting, in which I'll pick the first person and with my reasons. And finally, I debated about talking about this now, but I will. I'd like to have a town hall meeting, and the town hall meeting is not all of council. The town hall meeting will be myself or myself and the deputy, because if all of you are involved in the townhouse, then it becomes an official, meeting. That doesn't lend itself to questions or the informal nature of people coming forward to make comments and questions about the town. When that will happen, I want to wait until after the report by the recreation, I don't know what you call it, the recreation committee, proposal that's coming up hopefully in June sometime. So the town hall may not happen until after the summer, but I just want to throw that out there. So anyway, thank you very much. Next item, notice of motion. No notice of motion. Meeting is closed to the public.
That council moves into a meeting closed to the public at 8:30 PM to discuss the following matter, and that's Director of Corporate Services Clerk and Director of Operations Report Clerk 3523, and that's respecting a EIC legal update. And that matter is closed to the public pursuant to Section 239, 2C of the Municipal Act, as amended, as the subject matter proposed to, as the subject matter applies to litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board.
Mover and seconder, Councillor Rahi and Councillor Chapman. All those in favor? Carried. Now have a short recess.
report that council rises from the meeting closed to the public at 8:56 PM and reports the following, and that's that council gave direction to the Director of Corporate Services Clerk and Chief Administrative Officer regarding report clerk 3523 confidential EIC legal update.
Mover and seconder, Councilor Desrosiers, Councilor Chapman. All those in favor? As carried. Adjournment.
That council do now adjourn at 8:56 PM.
Mover and seconder, Councilor Desrosiers, Councilor Rahe. All those in favor? And that's carried. Or was it carried? Was it? Yeah, it was carried.
Keep on going.